Hello everyone. In the past couple of videos, we investigated quantum entanglement, discussing how the capabilities of quantum correlation extend beyond that of its classical counterpart. In this video, we will go on a brief aside to talk about the various notions of distance in quantum computation, as we will make extensive use of these in the second half of this course on quantum algorithms. In mathematics, one of the most natural ways to define distances is through a norm. You've probably dealt with various norms throughout your courses, from the absolute value operation on the real or complex numbers to the L2 norm for higher dimensional spaces. In all these instances, norms describe some kind of distance between objects. Formally, a norm is a map from elements of a vector space to the real numbers that obeys the following properties. Namely, it obeys subadditivity, meaning that it observes the triangle inequality, absolute homogeneity, meaning that we can bring out scalars outside the norm with their absolute value, definiteness, where the norm is only zero if and only if the input is a zero vector, and non-negativity. Note here that non-negativity is actually a redundant condition since it's automatically implied by properties 1 and 3, but I digress. From these norms, we can derive a distance function. Formally, this is called inducing a metric. A metric is simply a function which obeys the triangle inequality, is symmetric under interchange, and the distance between 2 points is greater than or equal to 0, with equality if and only if the 2 points are equal. As you can see, this is very similar to the conditions we imposed on a norm. Consequently, given a norm, we can define the induced metric as the norm of the difference of the two elements. Having defined the notion of norms and metrics, we can investigate some prominent methods of comparing quantities used in quantum computation. The first metric we'll look at is the Euclidean, or L2 distance, which we can use to compare pure states. You're likely familiar with the L2 norm from your basic courses on vectors or linear algebra, which simply corresponds to the Euclidean length of a given vector. This norm belongs to a larger family of norms known as the LP norms, which we can write more generally as follows. However, the L2 norm is special because it is the only norm out of these which is induced by an inner product, namely the Euclidean inner product. Consequently, because we deal with inner products often in quantum computing and quantum mechanics more generally, we most commonly use the L2 norm to characterize distance between vectors. Using this norm, we can induce the following metric, which simply measures the Euclidean distance between two endpoints of two vectors. For any two pure states in the n-qubit Hilbert space, we can see how close they are via the following norm expression, which we can actually write as the following expression on the right. Furthermore, if we choose global phases for each state such that the overlap is real, then this expression simplifies to the following. Hence, it's important to keep in mind that the choice of phase convention can change the value of this distance. Okay, so we can compare state vectors with the 2 norm, but what about density matrices? Well, we can move from vector norms to operator norms. In order to figure out which norm to use, we can take some inspiration from classical norms. Because density matrices correspond to classical ensembles of quantum states, it makes sense to consider distances for probability distributions. One such metric is the total variation distance, which, for discrete domains, we can write as 1/2 times the L1 distance between the distributions. Generalizing this approach to density matrices, we have that the trace distance is defined as 1/2 times the trace norm of the difference between the two density matrices. The trace norm of x here is simply defined as the trace of the square root of x dagger x. In other words, the trace norm is defined as the L1 norm of the singular values of x. In the case where x is Hermitian, as is the case for real linear combinations of density matrices, this simply corresponds to the L1 norm of the eigenvalues. Getting back to the actual trace distance, it should be noted that if both states are pure, we can write this trace norm in terms of the inner product of psi and phi. Note that there is no phase ambiguity here like there was in the L2 case. This is one of the main reasons why the trace norm is typically taken as a standard metric for comparing states in general, alongside the fact that it also gives us a way of comparing mixed states. Using the trace norm, we can also derive results for distinguishability of states. For example, let's say we are either given a density matrix rho 0 with probability p0, or a density matrix rho 1 with probability p1, which is 1 minus p0. Suppose we want to determine which density matrix we have been given. We can phrase any kind of binary measurement problem like this using a POVM with two elements, E0 and E1, where E0 plus E1 is equal to I. Here, we have that measuring E0 means that we guess rho equals rho 0, and likewise for E1. We then have that the probability of making the correct guess is given as follows. Here, this matrix which we are applying the POVM to is called the Helstrom matrix, and I will denote it by lambda. To maximize this probability, we find that we can choose E0 to project onto the eigenbasis with positive eigenvalues. Consequently, the trace expression is simply the sum of all the positive eigenvalues of lambda. This can be written in terms of the trace of lambda and its trace norm as follows. Substituting this back in gives us the optimal probability of successfully distinguishing between any two states. This is very useful for hypothesis testing based setups, for example, or for finding lower bounds on sample complexity for distinguishing between two states. In the special case where P1 equals P2 equals 0.5, we can also write this in terms of the trace distance as follows. Another useful method for comparing states is called fidelity. We define fidelity as follows. Note that fidelity is not a metric as it measures overlap between states rather than the distance between them. Consequently, when states have low distance between them, they have high fidelity. In particular, states that are close together will have a distance close to 0 and fidelity close to 1. Nevertheless, we can define a distance metric known as the Burish metric using fidelity, though I won't get into that here. To understand the expression for fidelity more intuitively, let's consider some special cases. Suppose that rho is a pure state here. Well, using cyclicity of trace, we get the following expression for the fidelity. As you can see, this is just the probability of projecting onto psi if we measure it in an orthonormal basis containing psi. Consequently, if sigma is also pure, we have that this expression just reduces down to the Born rule probability that you're familiar with from standard quantum mechanics. Fidelity is useful for a number of reasons. For one, it provides a very useful tool in practice since we typically cannot perfectly prepare given states. Consequently, fidelity provides a measure of how accurate a prepared state is to the ideal version. Furthermore, fidelity also can be used to bound the trace norm from both above and below, as follows. Getting back to our discussion of the trace norm belongs to a more general class of operator norms known as the Schatten p norms. These are simply defined as the LP norms of the singular values in the finite dimensional case. Choosing p equals 1, of course, gives us the trace norm that we are familiar with. Choosing p equals 2 here gives us the Frobenius norm, which in the case of a Hermitian operator gives us the L2 norm of the eigenvalues. This can be useful for analyzing distances and spectra of observables, for example. Just like the L2 norm, the Frobenius norm is also induced by an inner product, that being the Hilbert-Schmidt inner product, which is defined as follows. Choosing p equals infinity gives us the spectral norm, also called just the operator norm, as we saw in the previous lecture. This is simply just the largest singular value, or largest eigenvalue in the case of a Hermitian operator, an absolute value, of course. This norm is particularly useful for analyzing how close two unitaries are. In particular, you can imagine that if we have a unitary u and an approximate realization, u tilde, we might be interested in bounding the worst case deviation in L2 distance as a measure of the error in our approximation. This metric is precisely given by the operator norm. The final notion we will look at is the diamond norm, which is used to compare superoperators. We define the diamond norm as follows. The definition here is quite technical, but effectively the diamond norm is just the equivalent of the operator norm for superoperators, where we consider the operator with trace norm less than or equal to 1 that maximizes the trace norm of its image under the superoperator given by phi tensored with I, the identity channel. Using this norm, we can of course induce the following distance between superoperators, known as the diamond distance. In quantum computing, the physically realizable superoperators that we deal with are of course quantum channels. For these, we can further simplify this expression as the maximum taken over all density matrices rho of the trace distance between E rho and F rho, with the action of each superoperator being extended accordingly to the larger subsystem via the identity. This distance is very useful for determining how much error accumulates when you have noisy operations. For instance, you can compare a state that enters an identity channel to one that undergoes a noisy error channel and see how much the two states differ. Since we aren't doing anything with error in this particular course, or rather with noise, we won't really use this quite yet. But if you're ever doing any kind of work in practice with noise, knowing what this distance refers to is essential. Altogether, there exist a variety of different methods for ascertaining how similar certain quantum mechanical objects are, which you will find to be very useful for representing how close approximations certain states or operators are to some desired target. Of course, there exists a number of other metrics that are also used in quantum computing, but I just wanted to give a general feel for some of the most prominent ones that arise. In the next video, we will transition away from quantum computation to quantum algorithms by talking about how we can implement any controlled operation. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.